Welcome back to episode 316 of the Tallboy Radio podcast. And the more astute of you will have noticed a little bit of a change to our music there at the start. Is it in celebration of our 6 years? That's right, Gaza. This is our 6-year episode of Tallboy Radio, our 6th anniversary. No, it isn't, but we'll get to the reason for the change in music in just a short while. But first, I need to say hello to the man on the left.
Evening all, evening the world. I'm 6 years older than when we started doing this many moons ago, and many moons ago I would have never have thought we'd have still been doing it in 6 years time. But here we are. We're good to go. We're rocking and rolling, and I can't wait for this episode.
No, and we are rocking and rolling tonight because we have someone who's not only a musician, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. We'll get to the other stuff that he does. But Al, did you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about who was playing that music that we had there at the start?
Well, first off, is this London Calling, like the Clash song goes? I feel like I'm over there right now. Yeah. Thanks for having me, and congratulations on 6 years.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I appreciate the work that goes into doing something like this. So, well done, boys. My name's Al Gonzales, retired NYPD police officer. Some people have told me I've led somewhat of an interesting life, and I decided a couple of years ago to start writing some of the things that I've done down, and actually out of that has come a play. So I'm going full bore in April with about 6 performances in the New York City area. It's called Officer, Confessions of a South Bronx Cop. And basically, it's a collection of real life episodes that happened to me during my career, basically encompassing the period of 1986 to about 2006. And there's stories that every New York City cop has. Every London cop has, every LAPD cop has. It's just what you experience during your time on the force, interacting with people, being called to the scene, for the purpose of sorting the things out that are going on. You can't expect the civilians to be doing it. So when you're called to the scene, your training, your instincts, your good sense, is what people are paying you for, and what you're expected to present when handling these interactions with people. Sometimes they're minor interactions, sometimes they're very serious interactions, sometimes it's life and death. So I put them into a play, and along with a good dose of humor along the way, which I feel is essential, I'm ready to go out on the road and start doing this.
That's impressive. I mean, one thing we've learned, isn't it, guys, that we've had a number of different officers on mainly from New York City, but from Miami and a couple of other cities as well. And they do all have some stories to tell, some funny, some tragic, but certainly they're all very, very interesting. We love listening to them. But you still didn't answer the question. Can you tell me who played that piece of music then that we played at the start?
Yeah, that was me. I have to confess. I've been playing the bagpipes since I was a teenager. It was one of those things. I have 2 grandmothers that came to America on a boat, one from Tipperary, and I'm wearing the County Tipperary hurling jersey because
nice. I was going to ask about the shirt, actually. I couldn't quite see what it was, and I was going to say what was the shirt sort of thing, but now you've shown it. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, look at that beauty.
Yeah, they're the All Ireland champions right now, and my other grandmother was from County Mayo, and they used to take me to the St. Patrick's Day parade in New York City when I was maybe 10, 12 years old or so. And I would see the pipe bands come down Fifth Avenue with the big hats, very similar to this hat that's behind me here. Before I go any further, we call him Malcolm. Okay. That's his nickname. Scott's Guardsman. That's actually a bear skin that I acquired. It was actually part of this ceremonial units that doing the changing of the guard and guard mount out at Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace and things like that. But anyway, I would see these pipers come down, and they looked like they were 10 feet tall. And here I'm watching, and I said, oh, that's it. That's for me. And then I got a couple years older, and I was tall enough to play the pipes, big enough to play the pipes. I found out how to get lessons, and every Friday night during my school years, that was me at band practice. So I've been doing it professionally for quite a long time. I toured with Rod Stewart, had the honor of playing for Her Majesty the Queen up at Balmoral Castle privately, and got to meet her and stay over, and just such a wonderful, wonderful lady. I went over for her funeral to pay my respects. So bagpiping's been a part of my life. It's the very fabric of what makes me who I am.
That's incredible. That, I mean, just literally the tip of the iceberg of those stories is amazing. And to go from the Queen to Rod Stewart to to an NYPD police detective or policeman, it is an incredible story, and I can't wait just to dive in a little bit more.
Right. Do you mind if I crack a beer?
Yeah, you crack
getting
on.
rolling here. Yeah. So
I gather you've got some English beers as well tonight.
I went out and got a few of my favorites. I'm going to start out tonight with an Innocent Gun, which is actually a Scottish beer.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of like that one. Got to go back to an old chestnut here. Nice.
Oh, London Pride. Nice.
Fuller's London Pride. Yep. And I will finish the evening off with a nice Sam Smith's Imperial Stout. That'll be
very nice.
That'll be dessert. So
very nice.
Hey man, you have an excellent tasting beer, my friend. Those are some quality beers that you have there.
I can tell you one thing. I go to London probably once a year, but it gets harder and harder to find a pub with a proper bitter.
Yes.
Everything now is this grapefruit, citrus IPAs, which personally I despise. So, cheers, lads. I make up a list before I go over, so I don't have to, go to 100 different pubs to try to find what I like. And my absolute favorite, and this is a real treat when I can find it, is Harvey's Sussex Best, hand pulled on tap. It is just absolutely gorgeous and delightful, and I absolutely love that. That's my favorite at the moment.
Wow.
I don't think I've tried that.
No, and it's strange because Beans is a connoisseur of a number of different types of beer, and he always tries to have a different beer on an episode that we do. And I don't know how many beers he's up to now, number 400, 500, whatever it is.
478.
478. There you go. So, 478 different beers, and as you can well imagine, they range, from the absolutely horrendous to the absolutely immaculate sort of thing. So I think you go and show that one, Ad. I think at the moment he's doing it is like a Victoria.
Yeah, I don't think you'd approve of that.
No, a Victoria sponge cake or whatever it is. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm not a massive fan of sours, I'll be honest, to say the least. Adam doesn't mind them. I don't really like them. So there we go. I'm just putting it out there. I grew up, my dad used to drink like your hand-pulled bitters and stuff. So in a way, when I was growing up, I started drinking them, and and you'd have like a Robinson's ale, or you'd have a couple of the home brewery ales, and sort of Sam Smith, and was it the Samuel Webster beers, and then you sort of Caffrey's arrived, and Caffrey's is a lovely pint, and Ruddles, which again is a sort of an English and a county beer. That's the old cask hand pull, and the incredible beers, just incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good thing that we have a lot of young brewers coming into the trade, and that is good. But along the way, I think the negative is we sort of get way carried away with some of the flavors in there, and it's just not an enjoyable pint.
No, it certainly is not. No.
Yeah, I have a varied palate.
You do, yes.
I do. I like to sample them all. But speaking there, of youngsters coming into professions there. Why don't you tell us how you started off, found your way into the New York City Police Force? What a lovely segue that was.
Amazing.
Right. So going back to the pipes, in the New York City area, the police are involved tremendously with the bagpipes. So most of your police departments, at least the larger ones, have pipe bands within the department. And it's not just Irish and Scottish guys. You got guys with the names like myself, Gonzales, and you have Jewish guys. You have I've seen Asian cops playing the pipes, African American cops playing the pipes and the drums. So growing up, I would run into these police pipe bands along the way as I was learning and playing in a civilian band. And as I got into my 20s, I knew so many of them socially, and I became curious about the police profession. And this one cop, his name is Mike Lavelle. I'll never forget him. And he worked for the Transit Authority. Those were the cops that ride in the subways in New York City. They were a separate department back then. He took an interest in me, and he actually mailed me an application, took the time to go down to the post office, put a stamp on the envelope, and send it to me. And that started me on the path. I filled out the application, and it was about 3 years to go through the application process. You had to take a test. And I remember it was a Saturday afternoon, and 50,000 guys and gals took the test. That's how many people wanted a police job. This is 1984. Okay. Yeah. It's not like today where they can't recruit people. Back then, so many people wanted it, especially the NYPD job, because you could make a career. We didn't make a lot of money, but if you were going to become a cop, a lot of people felt that was the job, because there was so much you could do in the NYPD, where small departments, they don't have the helicopters, they don't have the police boats, they don't have the bomb squad, they don't have the cops that ride around Times Square on horses. So you could find your niche in the NYPD. It was such a big department. So I went through the process, and I was successful. And in my class, there was 3,000 of us that graduated Madison Square Garden, and all our families were there. And, I had gone to see Led Zeppelin and every major rock band you could imagine at Madison Square Garden over the years. But on that day, there we were, and people, 20,000 people looking at us, and Mayor Koch at the time handed us our diplomas, and then they gave us our assignments. And 2 days later, there we were on the streets, actually doing the job instead of being in the academy. So for me, it all worked out. And, I wouldn't have this show and everything like that if I hadn't made the decision to become a cop.
That's incredible. And like you say, when you think about a bagpiper, you don't think about surnames like Gonzales, do you?
No. And I won't say it would be the furthest sort of name that I would think, but it certainly wouldn't be top of the list either. I'll be honest with you. And I suppose, again, you look at it, and is it the fact that, obviously the Irish influence coming over, and is that where it instigated from? And obviously, Al, you mentioned about sort of grandparents and stuff, but there seemed to be obviously huge influx of Irish sort of coming over. It's certainly into New York and into the city, so you can see the influence around him. And we've both been to New York, and you can see it around. But it's incredible how it just filters into society. And you mentioned about the NYPD having bands of them around, and just incredible story, really.
It was the story of New York. So certain ethnic groups have outsized influence in New York City, depending upon what era you're talking about. The Dutch were the first to settle Manhattan, and then the English, And then the waves of Irish came during the famine years, and also the early 20th century, like my grandmother's. And the police department was the ideal landing spot for the poor Irish, mainly because they spoke English.
Mhm.
Okay. Number two, they culturally fit the profile of what good law enforcement uh, should be. They had, because of their strong church upbringing, they had a already formed set of right and wrong. So it was easy to get the Irish to adapt to, the teachings of the church in terms of right and wrong, onto the set of laws that were, on the books in New York City. And the other thing too was, they're family oriented. So you had the father, and then the son wanted to become a cop, and then the grandson. But when I came on the job, I really didn't have family that were cops. But a lot of the cops I worked with, you talking to them, like, oh yeah, my father, yeah, he's getting ready to retire. But my grandfather, he was on the police. My great grandfather, I was like, what the heck's, like,
Yeah.
what's going on here?
Yeah,
So the Irish ran the job,
Yeah, we've had a few New York City cops on, and quite a few of them will talk about the job that the dad did, and we've had Vernon Gebeth on, and he talks about his children now, and I think even his grandchildren
Yeah,
might even
yeah.
be in the New York City police force, which is just incredible how it's a generational thing.
Yeah,
What,
yeah.
what was it like when you served then? I think when you think back to New York, probably in the early 80s, it was a little bit of a different time than it was now. Drugs were much more
Yeah.
prevalent, much more of a thing back then, weren't they? And the crimes that were related to it.
So it came on in 86. So in those days, so I first came on, I was walking a beat in Times Square. That's where they assigned me. And I remembered when I was in high school, 16 years old, let's just say, me and my buddies, we were from New Jersey, but right across the George Washington Bridge. We could basically see New York from where we lived. And we take a short bus ride over, and then get on the subway and then go down into Times Square. And we used to go down there, see a dirty movie, or try to get a phony ID, so we could drink in the bar, because the drinking age was 18.
Yeah.
So you could buy that down in Times Square. And we'd go down there, maybe a group of 10 or 12 of us. And our parents had no idea we were, running around down there on a Saturday. And I remember, here we are, doing our thing. And there was this one cop walking the beat on 42nd Street. And I remember him looking at us, and he figured out what we were up to. And we all got scared. We got spooked. We started walking away from him. He started following us. And next thing you know, he's catching up to us. Like, I guess he just wanted to put a scare in us. And we ran out of there and got back on the train back to Jersey. Well, fast forward maybe 10 years, and there I was, that cop on 42nd Street, watching everybody on the street. I never could have imagined that one day that would have been me. And it's just an example of how life brings you these circumstances and things like that. But back in those days, crack was just starting to take hold of the city. It was an epidemic. It was almost like wildfire. And so much of the crime was fueled by crack, because these people, they just don't get high once a day. The high might last for 30 minutes, an hour, and then they've got to get right back onto it. I tell a story in my show. I was walking a beat not too far from Times Square. It was a dark, rainy night, and I got a call over the radio that there was somebody breaking into our personal cars that we drove to work right down the block from the police station. So I put over the radio that I was going to handle the call. And I turned the corner. It was a dark corner. And then I saw somebody duck down between the cars. So I got my nightstick out and my flashlight, and I went over to where he had ducked down, and I said, put your hands up, stand up, don't move. And the first thing I saw, the guy was about my age. He was wearing a jacket, which was the same high school that I had gone to in New Jersey. And I looked at it and I said, what the heck? And I looked at the guy, and he was all emaciated. Now, in school, this guy had been a star wrestler who was well built, and me and him were the same age. I grew up with him. His father was my football coach. His mother was the school nurse. I broke my hand in gym class, and I remember she took care of me. She was so nice to me. I looked at this guy and I shined a flashlight in his face. It was him.
Wow.
And he was a crackhead. And I was like, oh my God. He's like, Al, is that you? And I said, I won't say his name. Is that you? And he's like, yeah. He goes, Al, I'm a crackhead. This is what I've been reduced to doing. And it was a 1 in a million thing. And just then, 2 radio cars came around the corner. Okay. They got out of their car with their nightsticks, and they were ready to beat him down because he was trying to break into their cars. And they said, hey, rookie, is this the skell that's breaking into our cars? And at that moment, I had to make up a story. I had to make a decision. Was I going to protect my friend,
Yeah,
or turn him over to these guys who were just going to crack his skull wide open? And I had to make a decision. I protected my friend, and I just made up something real quick. I said, no. He said the guy who's doing it ran down towards Broadway. He went that way. And I could tell the cops didn't believe me, but there was really nothing they could do. They couldn't beat him in front of me. And, I found out, I went to my high school reunion 2 months ago, and I found out that my friend, who I found that night, had died of AIDS.
Wow.
So it was a tragic story. I tell this story in my show, but that was what was going on in New York City. Even people who you would never suspect of going down that path, once they started smoking crack, there was no escape from it. And all of New York City, was just in the throes of that drug.
Yeah. I mean, we sort of remember the different mayors that have come in, and it was Giuliani who pledged to really clean up the place and made a real difference. And a lot of the cops who've on talk about how he gave them back the power to deal with things. But yeah, as in Mayor Koch went back then, nobody's got a great deal of positive things to say about that time in New York City's history. Yes. But for you, and tragic though that story is, I'm sure the other stories that it's provided you with, giving you some great content for your play.
It has. I think once I decided to do this play, my biggest problem was, what stories would I not tell?
Yeah,
I got sort of a big board and index cards, and I started writing little synopses about what story might make sense, and also stories the audience might enjoy hearing. And I'd say 75% of them I just had to put to the side, because the show is about an hour and 15 minutes, and there's so much that I can't tell, only for time limitations, and that's going into the book that I've been writing. I'll save those stories, where there's more time to tell it. But the play itself, I made sure to put a lot of humor in it too.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of humorous things that happen on the job. And a lot of it comes from the guys you work with. Some of these guys are just comedic geniuses. You wonder, like, if they hadn't have been cops, they could have been comedy writers. The stuff that comes out of their brain. I would sit in amazement and watch these guys do stand-up routines and imitate. That's another good thing, that they're imitators. Like, they can look at somebody for 5 minutes and then do an imitation and pick out the little nuances about their personalities that really make it funny. So there was a lot of guys that made the job a ball of laughs at times. It wasn't all tragedy, it wasn't all bad stuff. I look back at it, and sometimes there'll be a night when I can't get to sleep, and I'll just think of a funny story that happened. I start laughing in the bed. My wife was like, what are you laughing at? I said, no, I just some of these stories, that's what I'm laughing at. And I'm glad I have those memories.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. So Stuart Willis normally listens to the podcast. I assume he's tuning in. God bless him. And he loves the episodes that we do with police officers, doesn't he? And he always wants to know about cop bars as well, like, the different hangouts that you went to. Have you got any stories to tell about the time you spent in those?
So I worked in, for the majority of my career, the 40th precinct in the South Bronx. It's on East 138th Street, a very, very bottom tip of the Bronx. It had once been an Irish neighborhood. Before that, it was German neighborhood, Jewish neighborhood. Then after World War II, the Irish started moving out. Puerto Ricans came. Now, the thing is, Puerto Ricans are citizens. They're not immigrants.
Yeah.
It's an important distinction. So what happens is the Irish, they drink in bars and pubs. Irish people don't drink on the street. That's not their culture.
Yeah.
So in the 40th precinct, it was in the Guinness Book of World Records. We had the highest concentration of Irish bars within a square mile in the world.
Wow.
Even Dublin didn't have as many as the South Bronx had. But once the Irish started moving out to Jersey and what we call Westchester and also Long Island and things like that, the pub trade couldn't survive when the Puerto Ricans moved in and this is not a negative, I'm just drawing a distinction. Puerto Rican people, what they'll do is, because you have a hot summer day, and they do this in Puerto Rico, they'll go into the bodega, which is, what we call in America a deli or whatever. It's a store that has your basics, and they always have freezers with cold beer and soda and water in it. The Puerto Rican people, when they drink, they buy one beer at a time, and then they drink it out on the stoop or wherever they're gathering. And, they play the music, and that's the culture. They're having a great time.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. But they go in and buy one beer at a time, so it's cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the pubs couldn't survive if the people don't come into the pub like the Irish or the English do and sit and have a proper point and have their chat in the pub. So we had the last surviving bar in that area of the South Bronx. It was called McSherry's. An Irish-American guy, Ray McSherry, owned it. And it was directly across the street from the precinct. You could throw a rock across the street and you'd hit that place. And the only reason it was a survivor was because it survived under the trade from all the cops that would come in. It opened at 7 a.m. because the cops got off at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
So the guys who worked the midnight shift could go across the street and have some drinks, and they would need some drinks because they wouldn't be able to get to sleep right away when they got home. And a lot of guys lived not too far. Guys lived in the city, so they'd have 2 or 3 beers, and by the time they got home at say 9 o'clock, they could fall off to sleep to be ready to come back. So anyway, McSherry's was the neighborhood place. It was the place not only for cops but people that lived in the neighborhood. And a lot of good people. I always say this, even in my show. I said the amount of good people far outweighs the people that made it a difficult place to live. Let's just put it that way. And the neighborhood people would come in, but along with that, you had all the characters, and you had a lot of people that, let's just say, they called the bar Star Wars because it got that nickname from the movie Star Wars, with the bar scene where all these different people,
and
cultures and cops and then people who were on mental disability, people who it was just this sort of cornucopia of people all thrust into this one, almost like a outpost on the frontier. There was no other place to have a beer, and so all the stories that come out with that mixture. And there was so much mischief going on, so much funny stories. If you're a cop, you just sit there, and it was almost like free entertainment. The people would come in, and of course, the ones that didn't have money, they would tell you they would do anything for a couple dollars so they could buy a beer or whatever. They say, I'm going to go into the bathroom and get this little bucket. I'm going to fill it with water. Tell me which one is your car. I'll go out and wash your car. And I'm like, you think I want you to like washing my car with that like dirty rag? Anything would go. We had one lady, we used to call her Cupcakes. She was about 6'3" and about 280 pounds. And she was always going off. She'd come in and say, I didn't get my SSI check. I don't know what I'm going to do. I need $5. And she'd say, I'll do anything. And we'd get a few drinks in us. We weren't angels ourselves. And we'd give her $5 to go into the precinct and take off all her clothes in front of the desk. And we could see out the windows of the bar right into the precinct. Now you got to understand, in the precinct, there's all these people in there, trying to make police reports, like, who mugged them, or who they got robbed. And then she'd go in there, and the sergeant who was on the desk was one of our buddies who would drink with us. And she'd do this thing. You got to see like people running out of the precinct onto the street, like that. And he knew we sent her in and stuff. But that was the thing. It was like free entertainment while you were there. And we were all bachelors in those days. We didn't have anything to go home to. So a guy like myself, I mean, what am I going to go home to, an empty apartment? I didn't even have food in the refrigerator. I ate out all the time.
Yeah.
So that was it. But we didn't have anybody else. We were cops in a precinct where the department basically didn't care about us. It was the South Bronx. All of the resources, all of the brand new patrol cars never went to us. They went to the Manhattan precincts, the Queens precincts, the ritzy areas of the city. And every other car from those precincts that was banged up, dented, and nearly falling apart, they sent to us. So our attitude was, here we are doing our job, and our badge says City of New York, just like every other cop's badge. But they don't care about us. So, we were good cops. We did our job. But but the other side of that coin is that we only had ourselves. So we took care of each other. Because the department really didn't care about us. As long as nothing major happened, almost anything went in our precinct.
Wow.
Almost like a sort of, the camaraderie, like a band of brothers, it's like, young guys, it's
Yes.
bachelors, and, you work together, you play together sort of thing. And I suppose that's what it's like. And it was, looking after each other, both on the job and off the job, I suppose.
Exactly. Hey, there's things that I don't say outside of, let's say, our circle.
Yeah.
But, we helped each other out, and we had to have that sort of fortress mentality, because we knew there was no way getting out of the 40th precinct. If you were assigned there, that was it. You would put paperwork in for a transfer. It would go nowhere. Nobody got out of there unless they got promoted.
Yeah.
They took a test and got promoted. I remember putting in for things, and not just me, but a lot of other guys put in for different units and stuff. I can count on one hand the guys, over 20 years that actually got taken out of there because the department's attitude was, one, you guys are cops that work in this area. We don't necessarily want you guys going into a better area.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? You're sort of that cousin or that uncle in the family, that you see on holidays, but you don't really want them around too much. That's how they looked at us. We have our own style of policing. There's, I say this in my show, there's the art of practicing medicine. There's the art of practicing law in the courtroom, and there's an art to policing.
Yeah.
And every cop has his own style. Every precinct has their own style, and you develop that over the years. So I remember, like, they would have these big, we call them details in Manhattan, high-profile events, parades, or things where they want the department to look at its best. Well, when they would grab us from the South Bronx, they would never station us near people. They put us out out in the boondocks, like, oh yeah, okay, here's your post, you stand over there and we'll let you know when you can go home. They never wanted us mingling with like the elites in Manhattan, because we just had a sort of a different style to us.
Yeah.
I've got to ask then. So, from that background, which is some pretty hardy upbringings and a pretty difficult area to police. I mean, I can sort of relate to it myself because I've got a bit of a background in retail. Once you find yourself in those unpleasant shops and you do okay in one of them, that's it. You ain't getting you moved back to the nice shops on the high streets. You get stuck out in the estates that nobody wants to go to. And I found that in my career. Enjoyed it, to be honest with you. I did enjoy that element to it. But coming from that background, writing a play, it seems a bit of a stone's throw from that.
A little bit of a left turn.
Yeah.
So when I look back, I have a funny story about when I got invited to play for the Queen. And let me just preface this. My dear friend to this day, we've been almost lifelong friends, his name is Jim Motherwell. And he was a British soldier in the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, it was a Scottish regiment, which has since been amalgamated. And I met Jim. The band was over here in New York City playing in Madison Square Garden. You got to understand, back 25, 30 years ago, the different bands from the British Army would come over and play shows, a big tour in America. And, there was so many people that were fans of it, and they would sell out Madison Square Garden. And I happened to meet Jim. They were the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders pipe band, I think, where they were with either the Royal Marines or Coldstream Guards on tour. So after the show, I was in a pub not too far from the Garden, and who was in there was all the lads from the pipe band having a jar, which was, oh my God, it was like in heaven. I was with a bunch of my pipe band buddies from the NYPD band, and here was the guys we just seen parading around Madison Square Garden in the pub with us having a beer. So Jim and I became great friends. So let's fast forward. Jim became the Queen's piper. He was handpicked by Her Majesty out of all the pipers in the British Army to be her piper, which meant he was part of her inner circle, around her all day, plays outside her window 9:15 in the morning, and interacts with the Queen all day. So in 2003, Jim was getting ready to retire, and he called me up and says, Al, right, he goes, I want to do something for you. Because Jim and I and our wives, we had traveled the world together, just not only as pipers, but just socially. And he goes, I'm going to go in and see the boss. That's what he called it. And I'm going to ask her, could I bring you over to Balmoral for what's called the Gillies Ball in August? And I got off the phone thinking, I don't think that's will ever happen, but it's a nice thought. He called me back an hour later. He says, right. He goes, she'd love to have you. And I couldn't
Wow.
believe it, right? So he says, here's the date. You know, you fly into London, then get a plane up to Aberdeen, and then I'll meet you at Balmoral. So being a New York City cop, you have to understand that off duty, you're still subject to certain regulations.
Yeah.
And you just can't go and do anything you want that might have any reflection on the department. So one of the things Jim said to me was could you wear something that's emblematic of the NYPD? So I said, great. You know, I would wear my dress. We call it the dress blouse. It has the patches and my shield and everything like that, along with the kilt. Mix and match. It looks great. So I went to my commanding officer, and I always had a great relationship with him. I said, Inspector, I said, you know, I want to talk to you something. And I told him the whole thing. And I said, you know, they want me to wear part of the uniform, but I don't want to do it without clearing it. He goes, right, you're right, Al. He goes, there's a lot of haters. Somebody would find out about that and then drop a dime on you, which means put a dime in the phone and call and report you. That's where that drop a dime expression, it's an American thing. So he wrote up a letter authorizing it. It says, right now you got to go to the borough commander, get him to endorse it. And then you got to go down to One Police Plaza headquarters and get the commissioner to sign off on it. And I said, oh my God. So everybody did it. And then I went down to the commissioner's office. And then the lieutenant comes out to me. He goes, and usually the lieutenant signs off on it. He looks at it and says, okay. He takes the letter. He goes into the commissioner. It was Ray Kelly at the time. And he comes back out. He goes, the commissioner wants to see you. I said, oh, geez. So I go into his office, you know, I do the proper thing. I stand at attention. He goes, relax, officer. He goes, I'm looking at this letter. And he goes, just tell me one thing. How the hell does a street cop from the South Bronx get invited to be a guest of the Queen? He goes, I can't even do that. So I gave him the short version of the story. And he says, I'll sign it. Just don't do anything to embarrass the department. So a week later, I was off on a flight, and then a guest of the Queen at Balmoral, which was just an absolutely surreal experience. And just for your audience, inside Balmoral Castle, it's not opulent. It's not like Windsor or Buckingham Palace. It's very Spartan. It's almost like a hunting lodge.
Yeah.
So the rooms have a bed, a dresser, and sort of a dressing closet. And there was a valet who helped me, you know, sort everything out. And this is a really nice story about the Queen. Perhaps some of your audience might not know this side of her. So when I got to my room, on the dresser was a bottle of single malt scotch. And I saw that, and the valet said to me, that's from Her Majesty. She wanted you to have that. And I said, well, isn't that nice? You know, I figured that was just something they do all for the guests. The Queen is not involved in some that kind of minutia. So then the next night, myself and Jim Motherwell, and several other pipers from the British Army, we played for Queen Elizabeth, Prince Philip, Prince Andrew, Sophie. I'm trying to think who else might have been. Oh, Princess Anne, who was one of my favorites. Anyway, we played around the dinner table for them, and then later that evening, there was the Gillies Ball in Balmoral, and we piped the Queen down the steps and the whole thing like that. And then my friend Jim said to me, right, the Queen, I'm going to bring you over to her in about a minute. And I said, well, what do I say? You know, he goes, don't worry. She'll put you at ease. He goes, but you can't end the conversation. You have to wait until she'll take a step back and put her hand out. And that's when you know it's time to go.
Yeah.
You can't just say, well, hey, nice talking to you. See you later. You know,
See you later, Queenie.
But I wouldn't know that as an American. So Jim brings me round to her, and you know, she puts her hand out, I shake it, and I said, thank you so much for inviting me. I just wanted to say that, you know, this is the thrill of a lifetime for me. She says, she leaned into me before she said anything else. Did you get the bottle of scotch I left for you?
Wow. Wow, brilliant.
And I said, oh, yes, I did. I said, it's half gone. You know, I had a little bit of it since. Well, the next day there was a new bottle.
No way.
On my dresser. So I just say that story because it just shows that the Queen had a personal touch to her. It wasn't just all relegated to staff. Oh, the other thing she said to me, she goes, I wanted to make sure you got it because I was afraid, and this is her exact words, I was afraid the staff would nick it.
Brilliant.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is brilliant.
Just a lovely woman. And that's why I went over when she passed away. I felt it was my duty and obligation to go over, and I met up with Jim, and they interviewed Jim for the BBC and everything like that. And I watched from Windsor on the long walk as they brought her casket up to Windsor.
Incredible. Do you still have the whiskey? I would have been tempted to keep a little bit. I'm not very good at keeping whiskey.
No, you're not very good at keeping whiskey.
No, it didn't. It didn't make it out of Balmoral. It got all drank.
I respect that. I respect that too.
Yeah, it was well put to use though. Yeah,
incredible. Wow. And is that one of the stories in your play as well, or does it just focus on your time within the?
I have that story in the show. It's one of those stories that I think for different shows I'll put that one in, and then for other shows I'll put one about Bodyguard and Princess Diana in, and Mother Teresa. So I have little pieces that I might put it in for this show and this audience, and all that. I'm only trying to make this show an hour and 15, because after that people's feet start going to sleep no matter what the show is about, you know.
And you mentioned there that, you know, you might put a story about Princess Di, you might put a story about Mother Teresa, and obviously, you know, for the people who are watching, we've just popped a picture up there of you good self and Mother Teresa. So do you want to just sort of talk us through how that came to pass and how that arrived?
So Mother Teresa is part of the I believe it's called the Little Sisters of Charity. That's her order. They wear the distinctive blue and white habit. And in the 40th precinct in the South Bronx, that order has a mission there. They do work in the community. And Mother Teresa would visit every year. And one year she was visiting, and my commanding officer said to me, hey, Al, I want you to go over there. Mother Teresa's coming up, and they're asking if we could send an officer over there just to keep an eye on things and all that. I said, yeah, sure. So I went over there. So over the course of several years, when Mother Teresa would come back, they would always call up the precinct and said, is Al available? Could he come over? Mother Teresa was asking, because I got on with her very well. She gave me rosary beads that she blessed. I still have them, actually. And when I tell this story in the show, I put the rosary beads on that she gave me, and we would talk for hours. They had a little garden where she would roll up her sleeves and plant the vegetables and and get dirt all over her hands, and she'd ask me about my family and this and that, and so I enjoyed um, my yearly sort of sojourns with her. And one year, 1997, this was in June, she said to me, "Ow," she was all worked up. It wasn't really the Mother Teresa that I knew. She was kind of like hopping around, like, big smile on her face. She says, "Princess Diana is coming up to visit me today for lunch." And she's, me and Princess Diana, we're very good friends. We talk a lot. And, she told me that, Diana had gone through a rough time. She'd just divorced Prince Charles. And I believe Mother Teresa was some sort of a confidant to her. And so a couple hours later, there was about 100 photographers outside the mission. I didn't call anybody and let the cat out of the bag, but somehow they found out. And next thing you know, a car pulls up with one man driving and Princess Diana in the back seat. And she got out, and I would tell you, when she got out, wow. I mean, I was always a fan of her, but she was just radiant, a impeccable tan, skin just as smooth as can be, and so well put together from head to toe. And she got out, and all the cameras started going, and I'm standing by Mother Teresa, and she comes up, and they hug, and they turn and take photos, and then they go inside, and they had lunch. And so I'm at the door just keeping an eye at things and making sure the photographers stand back. But what I thought was very strange was she didn't have any visible security. And so I went over to the fellow that was driving the car, and I said, I introduced myself. I said, "Let me ask you, are you, MI6 or, special security?" And he goes, "No." He goes, I'm just a driver for the British consulate in New York. I'm not armed or anything." I said, "Okay." So I called my commanding officer. I said, "Inspector, maybe you want to come over here. Let me just show you what's going on." So he came over and explained it. He goes, "Yeah, that is very strange." So he goes, what do you think, Al?" And I said, "Listen, I got an idea. I got my police car here. The driver told me she's going to Teterboro Airport, which is 10 minutes from where I grew up in New Jersey." I said, "Why don't I take her in my car? The driver can follow." I said, "I'll make sure she gets onto the plane, because she's going to the Red Cross ball in Washington, D.C. later that night, maybe an hour flight." He goes, "Okay, that sounds like a good plan, right? Yeah." He goes, I said, because I said, "Inspector," I said, "anything happens, they're going to look for somebody to blame, and they're going to come back at us, and they come back at you, And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, let's CYA, because that's what cops do best. You have to, because you're always being second guessed.
Yeah.
So he went over to the driver and explained the situation. The driver said, "Fine." He goes, "I'll follow." So when she came out, the driver explained the situation. So she got in my car. She had no problem with it, right? And I was so glad I had gotten the car washed and vacuumed, because you got to understand something. The average NYPD police car smells of like week-old Chinese food and soy sauce and stuff, because that's what the cops do. They don't go into a restaurant and eat. They're eating in the patrol car in between calls, so it smells god awful. But I was pretty good about that. I would take the car to the car wash and get the thing vacuumed out and whatnot, because I said, boy, it's almost like the old story your mother would tell you: make sure you wear clean underwear in case you got into an accident and you had to go to the hospital. You don't want to be there like with dirty. So I was glad I got the car washed and everything. So she got in, it was halfway presentable. Anyway, she got in, and that day it was the first ever what we call the Subway Series. It was the New York Mets and the New York Yankees, the two baseball teams in New York, were playing in Yankee Stadium. And this was a big thing. It's almost like a World Cup football match. You know, the whole city is like going nuts. Well, the traffic that was going on and the route I was going to take on the highway was completely deadlocked. So I said, how am I going to get up over the George Washington Bridge from the Bronx over to Jersey? So I said, I'll take the little nook and cranny side streets that I knew like the back of my hand, and we'll avoid most of the traffic. It'll be a little slower, but we'll be moving. We'll get her there, the whole thing like this, right? I remember coming down this one street with her, and it was like completely blocked. All the Puerto Rican people and Dominican people were like out on the street. Music is blasting. Everybody's drinking beer, like food everywhere, you know, the whole thing like that. So I'm trying to navigate going through there, and we got stopped at this traffic light. And it's me, the front driver, with my driving with my partner, and Diana in the back, all alone. But we don't have tint on our windows. So as we're stopped at the light, people are like, "Oye, mira, esta Diana Princesa." Like, here they come. They're coming up to the window. They're like banging on the window and they're looking, they're pointing. They can't believe it. This is Princess Diana in the South Bronx with all this going on. And I'm looking in the back at her. I said, I screwed up now. And she's laughing. She's enjoying. She says, I could hear her in the back laughing, right? And people are banging on the window, you know, roll it down. She rolls it down. I can't stop her. And people are reaching in and hugging and kissing and saying hello, taking a hand, kissing her, the whole thing like this, right? Finally, we start to go. And she says, she goes, I really enjoyed that. She goes, you got to understand, I don't get to do anything like that back in England. And I said, you know, they really love you. I said, you know, you're so recognizable. I said, but these are the people. They're genuine people. They're real people, you know. And so that sort of broke the ice. We started having a conversation. Eventually, we got on the George Washington Bridge and to Teterboro Airport. But along the way, she started asking me about my family. You know, do they worry that you're a New York City cop? You know, is it dangerous? And here's one thing I always remember. She said to me, you know, when my boys were young, meaning William and Harry, they used to say, oh, I want to become a policeman. I want to become a fireman. I want to become this and that. This was before they knew who they really were.
Yeah.
You know, but they said the same things that any young boy would say. So I got her to Teterboro, and she got out of the car and she came over to me and she gave me a hug. She says, Al, I really enjoyed this. This was really special. It was, you know, totally unexpected. But one thing she had said to me, I remember, I said, you know, do you think it's a little bit strange that you don't really have any security? And she said, she goes, that's on purpose. She goes, I don't want the security. She goes, I think they're spying on me. And years later, that turned out to be true. Yeah, they had eyes on her. Of course they would. But, you know, that was the thing with Diana. And the most ironic thing, when we were driving, I had asked her, could you please put on your seatbelt? And she said, would you mind if I didn't, because it wrinkles my clothes? And she says, the photographers are everywhere, and I try to look my best. Well, that was June of '97. 2 months later, it was my 40th birthday party. And on the TV came over the headlines that Princess Diana involved in a serious car crash in Paris. And then a little while later, Princess Diana dies, car crash in Paris, and she didn't wear her seatbelt.
Yeah.
And she would have survived that crash if she had. So I thought about that, and, you know, all for, I guess you could say, vanity. It you know, resulted in a tragic circumstance.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, you're not wrong. Well, you know, so one way, you know, the media really held culpable for that accident, and the fact that she felt the need not to wear one again because of the media doubles down on that a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I tell you what, though, you've given people out there some very good reasons to go and see your play. It still blows my mind that someone with your background there in the Bronx, although we have to say some rather salubrious events other than the happening in the South Bronx there, goes on to write a play. So I'll share a shot here for the people who are watching the video. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this screenshot here and a little bit about the play?
That is a shot. I did a 3-man show back in April of 2025. It was called A Cop, a Cabbie, and a Crusader with 2 other friends of mine. One, John McDonough, who is a 40-year cab driver in New York City. Think about that, driving a cab in New York City for 40 years. And also Brendan Fay, who is an activist in New York City. And the 3 of us put together a show bringing 3 classic sort of collaboration of New York stories. And this was the genesis for doing my own solo show. And this particular shot was at the Irish Repertory Theater in New York City, which is basically the top off-Broadway venue. We did our show there. It was sold out, got great reception. And like I said, from that, I decided to do my own one-man show on my own. John McDonough has his own one-man show. It's called Off the Meter. And Brendan's developing his own one-man show. So this was sort of, the testing ground. Did we have something, the 3 of us? And it turned out we did. It was well received. So here I am now in April. I'm going full bore. I'll be presenting it in 2 shows up in Albany, New York, 2 shows down at the Jersey Shore, 2 shows in Manhattan. And then my dream is to bring it to the UK and Ireland and perhaps do some shows over there. If I could get, if anybody sees this over in the UK and they think that it might be something that your audiences over there might like to see, I'd be happy to talk to them.
Yeah, amen.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hopefully someone's watching. I can promise you this: you'll have 2 people who'll come and visit.
Yeah, you first 2 tickets. So but if you get it up and running and you do find your way over here, then we'll be front and center in the first row.
Absolutely,
that'd be wonderful. That'd be wonderful. You get older. I can tell you this. I mean, I'm older than you 2 lads over there. But when you get older, all these things start to crystallize, and you say, can't put it off anymore. Just got to do it.
Yeah.
When you're younger, you have the luxury of saying, yeah, okay, do it next year. But I'm at the point in my life where I just got to do it. That's it.
Yeah, grasp the nettle, and as they say, and just get on and do it.
Amen. Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Do you never get stage fright, or you never get nervous before you go on?
I remember I've played on the stages of Madison Square Garden, Radio City, Lincoln Center, in front of the Queen. I'm not somebody who gets stage fright. You just tell me where it is I got to go and what I got to do, and I do it, and I eat it up. Yeah, wow. I'm blessed that way. No stage jitters for me.
Absolutely.
Oh, incredible.
You absolutely are. But let's take another picture then on the screen. Tell us a little bit about this image here.
Yeah, I did a CD a few years ago.
Of course you did.
Who doesn't? Everybody has a CD. I just got to the point where I said, let me go start putting my music down in proper form. And so the title of the CD is Dancing with Myself. And if you remember the song, I'm just popping a London Pride here as we speak. Dancing with Myself was a big hit over in America for Billy Idol. So it turns out Billy and I are related through my mom's side. Billy's actually half Irish and he's half English. His dad's English, his mother's Irish. His Irish side, their name O'Sullivan. So they're cousins to my mom. And I did Dancing with Myself as one of the tracks on this CD, believe it or not. I did it with a rock band, so it's rock band and pipes. And we did it very much in the style of how Billy does it. And Billy's a great guy in person. He's you know, he's been through a lot. He's been a bit of a wild child, but on a human level, he's very down to earth. Just like us sitting here. It's the same type of rapport you would have with him, if you weren't coming at him like he's a rock star, where he doesn't have to present that persona. If it was just a couple of us having a pint here like this, I've met him several times, backstage at his shows, and my wife was always a big fan of his, so she thought I was full of it when I said that we were related. And the only way I proved it was I called up his management, and they got me backstage, me and my wife, and it was funny because he was all hugging and kissing on her because he knew she was my wife, so he kind of made like a big thing. He knew that it was a big thing to her. It's just like, you're the girl that married Al. He's like,
no, nice.
It was just great guy. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't have to do that.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is brilliant. So we always wrap these things up round about the hour mark. And Gaz, this is where you normally say we need to do a second episode.
Well, yeah, and I say it not for every guest, but actually, for the guests that we really enjoy, and for the guests that we feel as though our listeners will enjoy and absolutely would want to hear more. It is at that point where I do normally say, we definitely have to have you back on again, and we definitely have to talk a little bit about your play, a little bit more about there's just so many things. Like, you've literally just dropped Billy Idol into the podcast like 2 minutes from the end of the podcast. So there's definitely things that we need to dig a little bit deeper. So I mean, if you would, we'd be honored to have you back for a second time. We can just dig a little bit more at some point.
Yeah, that sounds great with me. I mean, it's just a couple of boys having a pint, and
yeah,
if we were sitting in the pub, this is exactly what we'd be doing. So I'm fine with that. And
I talk about it all the time, and what you've just said there is basically the very premise of Tallboy Radio. Both myself and Adam we're sort of big American football fans, and it was. The premise really for the podcast was, if we went down to London and we were going to watch one of the international series games back in the day, and we were in a pub and we dropped a microphone in the middle of the table, what would we talk about? And it ranges everything from Princess Di to the Queen to aliens to conspiracy theories to this to that to that to that. What would we talk about? And literally, that was the premise of the podcast, wasn't it? Really, to start with.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Yeah. Well, this is what makes it interesting, because you could have sort of a sense of what you'd like to discuss, but then you sort of take it from that premise, and then here we go.
Yeah, we've done that lots of times before.
Yeah. And I think our listeners who tuned in tonight and they're hearing about a New York City police officer who's written a play, which in itself is fairly unique, I would imagine. You know what I mean? That someone's done a play about their time in the New York City police force. Then to be hearing about Mother Teresa, Princess Di, the Queen performing bagpipes at Balmoral, we're played in by your good self though, with the Scottish tune that we played at the very start there.
Uh-huh. Incredible. It is. It's mind blowing. It's incredible. And again, one of the reasons why we do the podcast is to meet people like yourself. Myself and Beans have been doing it, as we said, for 6 years now, and we've met some incredible people along the way. And you are the reason why we keep doing these things, because we do it to educate ourselves. We do it to because we enjoy sharing and having other people share their stories with us, and that's absolutely what we do.
Yeah, and this is what. I could just speak, as a New Yorker. This is what we do best. We just have ourselves a drink and just start going, on wherever the conversation takes us. Yeah. When I was a cop in Times Square, like I said, I'd meet people all night, and then half the time I wind up in the pub with them, continuing the conversation after my shift ended.
Brilliant. Man, can you imagine? That would be great. That would be great.
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll have you back on. You know, once you've done your tour of plays, we'll get you back on and we'll hear about that experience, what that was like, how they were received. Here's some more of the stories that you know that you got to share with the folks that came out to see you. But just for our listeners, then, because we do have a good portion of listeners in the UK, but we also have a really good portion of listeners in the US as well, and on that eastern seaboard. So if you want to give a shout out to you mentioned where you come and see the play. There's a couple of websites that where people can see your stuff on. Did you want to give those a little bit of a shout out?
Sure. Okay. So the show website is www.officertheplay. That's all one word. officertheplay.com. And I list the dates of where the show will be performed in April. April is really what I'm concentrating on. And if you know of anybody that might want to host me to do my show there, just get in touch with me. My email is on the page there. If you think your group or organization might want to have my show there, reach out to me. And my other website, music website, is www.theroyalpiper. That's all one word, theroyalpiper.com. And you can find out more about me as a musician.
Indeed. Yeah, and you can listen to some of the music on there as well as one of the tabs you can open up. And there's plenty of tunes for you to listen to, which I did myself and which I pinched the music from the start of this. I did ask Al's permission first because we have got a bit of a track record of getting into trouble with copyright laws.
yeah, let's not talk about that.
I've got some pretty solid provenance on this one that I've got permission to use that music. So thank you very much, Al. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. Some of the stories that we've heard tonight have been utterly mind-blowing. When you'd said you'd guarded Princess Diana, that wasn't the story I expected to hear tonight. You know what I mean? How personal it was. It was incredible, wasn't it? That was a fabulous story. I love listening to that bit. So, everything else, but that specifically.
Thank you. I was blessed to meet her. That's how I remember her.
Well, she was blessed to meet you too. Let's keep it that way as well. So thank you very much, Al. And we've been blessed as well, haven't we, guys, to share our 6th anniversary episode.
We wouldn't have it any other way. And as you just said, Beans, look forward to having Al back, when he can talk about how the play's gone and how it's been received and some stories, no doubt, the good, the bad and the ugly. We'll look forward to the next time.
Indeed.
All right, boys.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, Al.
Around the mic, kicking back, alright. Day turns into night, podcast in the spotlight. Sipping on that brew,